Hi, I'm Dr. Wisniewski, and today I want to talk about first vaccine against coronavirus causing COVID-19 disease that got emergency approval in United Kingdom. And as you probably know, we also expect emergency authorization for use in United States given by Food and Drug Administration, most likely around 10th of December. So given that this topic is of great interest to everybody in the world, and including me, my friends and family members, I want to share what I learned on this subject. As you know, this is a little bit atypical topic for me, since I talk mostly about issues affecting children and neonates and newborn babies. But I still think it's important for me to share what I found out about this vaccine. I am a pediatrician and neonatologist. I practice neonatology in the United States, and I am not an infectious disease specialist. I am not virologist. I am not specialist in vaccines. However, I do have passion for educating larger public about medical issues, and I run my own blog, which you can find at neoped.edu.com. I also have my YouTube channel, neoped.edu, where I talk about medical issues affecting newborn babies mostly, but also children and women's health. Finally, I authored a book, Babies Born Early, which you can find on Amazon. As a reminder, this is only having educational purpose, and it should not be considered as any kind of medical advice. Any type of information included in this video might be erroneous or might be interpreted wrongly by me, so you should not use it in your medical decision-making process. Let's talk briefly about COVID-19 disease. As you know, this is caused by a novel microorganism virus from the family of coronaviruses. It is a respiratory virus which spreads very easily with human contact from person to person. We don't know exactly whether it's only by air droplets or also through aerosolized air. However, we do know that it spreads very easily. At this point, the main way of controlling spread of this disease is preserving social distancing and using personal masks. But we are hoping that emerging vaccines will help us in controlling this disease. Up to now, and I am talking on December 4th, we know of over 65 million cases confirmed by testing worldwide, and around 14.5 million cases in the United States. We also know of 1.5 million deaths worldwide and at least 280,000 deaths in the United States. The other important piece of information are that mortality affects mostly older people and people with underlying conditions such as diabetes, high blood pressure, cardiovascular diseases, or obesity. So what I'm going to discuss today. As I mentioned in introduction to this video, I want to talk about Pfizer vaccine, COVID-19 mRNA based, which has specific name that was used during trial, BNT162b2. The data that I will cite in this video comes from the data given to public and medical professionals by United Kingdom agency called Medicines and Healthcare Product Regulatory Agency. I will leave links to those documents provided by that agency under description to this video. Finally, I want to emphasize that emergency authorization was given only in United Kingdom at this point, and it was given for public health agencies to use in people 16 years and older. Also, it is important to know that the data which has been disclosed so far is limited. However, we hope to have a look at larger set of data that FDA promised us to release to public prior to their December 10th meeting. Let's talk a little bit about vaccines. How do they work? Ever since vaccines were discovered, we know that they do save a lot of lives. And I'm sure you heard about such vaccines as against mumps, chickenpox, hepatitis B, polio, and many others. And each vaccine works in a little bit different way, or it's composed of different material. And among material that we use in vaccines, we can use single antigen or protein. We can use part of the microorganism. We can use weakened microorganism. And finally, we can use dead microorganism. We also know that when you do have disease, and having a disease in the past usually gives you protection or immunity from catching it again. And even if you catch it again, have some protection and you are less sensitive to developing very severe disease. mRNA vaccine BNT162b2, it's a very new product. It's a new platform that has never been used before in vaccines. The way how it works is that the vaccine contains mRNA, which is basically matrix ribonucleic acid. And this mRNA encodes part of spike protein, which resides on the surface of coronavirus. And using those spike proteins, coronavirus attaches to our cells and it's able to penetrate those cells and later on to multiply. The idea behind this vaccine is that we give you mRNA, which is code for your cells to produce that spike protein in your cells. Then those proteins are released and circulate in your body, stimulating your own immune response. At the end, you produce antibodies and also you produce what we call cellular response, meaning that some of the defensive cells in your body learn how to defend you from the virus. So you have two types of responses. One is called humoral through antibodies, and the other one is cellular through certain cells that will learn how to recognize and defeat virus faster. At this point, this vaccine in United Kingdom will be recommended for 16-year and older people, and the injection will be given into the muscle in the amount of 0.3 mL, and it is recommended to be given in 2 doses, 21 days apart. That time period between 2 doses might be a little bit longer, but the minimum amount of time it's required to be 21 days. At the end, they also stated that the vaccine gives only protection most likely after 7 days after the second dose. You can think about 1 month from the first dose if you received the second dose 21 days after the first one. There are contraindications to this vaccine, like to any other medications, and the first one would be hypersensitivity to any of the ingredients, and usually you can find those ingredients on the manufacturer's information sheet. Also, if you are undergoing any acute severe febrile illness, you wouldn't be candidate to receive that vaccine. The relative contraindication are bleeding disorders because, as we said, that vaccine is given into your muscles, so it can cause severe bleeding in people who suffer from bleeding disorders. Finally, people who have immunocompromised status may or may not be candidates to receive this vaccine. However, we don't have good data. I know from some information that among participants, there were people who had HIV under control. So once we get more data on that, perhaps some people with immunocompromised status could receive that vaccine. Also, women who are pregnant and breastfeeding are not recommended to get that vaccine because we don't have enough data how it affects growing fetus and the child. Safety data was obtained for at least 2 months on 19,000 people who received this vaccine. And important thing to mention is that among all participants, there were people of different races, ages, and with underlying conditions, provided those conditions were stable under treatment. Side effects and adverse symptoms that were noted in people who received vaccine included pain at the injection site, and that was found in over 80% of people, fatigue or being tired in almost more than 60% of people, headaches in about 50% of people, muscle aches in 30% of people, chills in 30% of people, joint pains in more than 20% of people, and fever in at least 10% of people. It is important to say that all the symptoms were considered mild or moderate in severity, and it was agreed that if those symptoms were moderate and were bothering you, you could have taken some medications for relief, such as pain medications or anti-fever medications, such as paracetamol, for example. Efficacy. Efficacy was studied in 36,621 participants, 12 years or older. And importantly, at least 42% of all those participants were older than 55 years of age. And it is important because we know from some other past vaccines that vaccines may not work as effectively in old people as in younger. And since this virus affects very badly older population and causes more mortality among older folks, it is important to show that this vaccine is effective in older people. About 18,000 people in treatment group and 18,000 people in placebo group were included in final analysis, and people who developed COVID-19 disease prior to 7 days after the second dose were excluded from analysis. And again, that is important fact because we know that in order to develop some immunity after being exposed to the antigen or to the microorganism, we need enough time. So that time usually is somewhere between 2 to 4 weeks. In this case, they decided that it is 7 days after the second dose, which is almost 1 month after the first dose. Finally, most likely, this is not explained in the papers given to us. For final analysis, they only included participants 16 years old or older. So they excluded those participants who were between 12 years old and 16 years old. Most likely we'll hear more about this age group, and I would imagine that the companies will be conducting more studies in the future, including children, because of course we want to make sure that children also will be protected. In final results, they told us that in the vaccine group, there were 8 cases of coronavirus disease identified. And in placebo group, which means group that did not receive this vaccine, there were 162 cases of COVID-19 disease. So after statistical analysis, they told us that overall effectiveness of this vaccine was 95%. With confidence interval between 90 to 97% for all age groups 16 years old and older. And confidence interval in this case means that if we repeated this trial many times, again and again and again, the final results would be expected to be somewhere between 90% and 97%. And they did that analysis for different age groups. They gave us results for 65 years and older, and that efficacy was 94% with confidence interval 66% to 99%. And you see that here that confidence interval is much larger. And that is because in that group, as you can expect, there were less participants and less participants who developed disease. So those results are less accurate, so that confidence interval is much wider. And finally, in the age group of 75 years old and older, the efficacy was 100%. However, confidence interval in this case was from -13% to 100%. So that means that those results are not very reliable. Most likely they did not have enough cases at this age group to have very accurate, very reliable results. Of course, that will require more participants in the future and monitoring people who are at this age group and will be receiving that vaccine in the future to make sure that indeed this vaccine is working for these folks. Importantly, also they noted that patients with obesity, asthma, diabetes, high blood pressure had similar efficacy as people without any underlying conditions. What we don't know. We don't know how this vaccine works for children. We don't know how this vaccine works for pregnant, whether it can pass through placenta to the fetus. And also we don't know whether this vaccine can pass with breast milk to the baby and what effects it would have on the newborn baby that is breastfeeding from mother who received this vaccine. Finally, we don't also know how long immunity will last. As I already explained, it is expected and we know really that this vaccine stimulates two types of immunity, humoral with antibodies and cellular with cells. We don't know how this immunity will last. From past studies and observing people who had COVID-19 disease, we know that the amount of antibodies after a while drops down and sometimes even disappear. However, it's possible that these people also will have preserved cellular immunity. We don't know what will be happening with this vaccine effects and how long that immunity will last. That, of course, will require further studies. Finally, I don't think that public received enough or complete information on this vaccine. The documents which were published and given to medical professionals and future patients by UK agency, they were not adequate in my opinion and not complete. They were not giving all raw data and all informations in granular way, breaking down by age, by gender, or by diagnosis of underlying condition. I would love to see more data, and I'm hoping that FDA will actually publish this kind of data prior to that December 10th meeting that I already mentioned will be happening next week. Should you take this vaccine? So, as I said, I'm not going to advise you for or against this vaccine. It's up to you. However, I want to encourage you to read everything, whatever you can about this vaccine before you make that decision. While you make your decision, consider what are your risk factors for COVID-19 disease and whether participants that were included in this trial had the same type of health situation similar to yours. Did they have similar underlying condition or age that you are at? Talk to your personal doctor. He might be the best advisor to tell you whether to take that vaccine or not. And finally, again, I want to emphasize this presentation does not constitute any type of medical advice. Thank you for your attention. And if you're interested in any more videos from me or resources, visit my blog neopededu.com or sign up to my video channel on YouTube, Neoped Edu. Thank you.